Okay, and there.
Test.
We are going live. And we are live already, so welcome to Behind the Scenes of AV Rant, episode number 657. This is the behind the scenes version, and you eagle-eyed viewers might notice that Tom's side is a logo this evening. He's doing all kinds of different things. Different microphone, no video. That's the way it's going to be this week, but hey, that's all right. So, this is the behind-the-scenes version. Still using OBS. Should be able to see pictures when I show them during the episode, so that should be all right. I think that's the preamble done. Let's see. That's recording, and this is up here. All righty. Tom can start when he pleases.
Yeah, this is going to be a short podcast as well. Sorry. Just let you know. Don't get all bent out of shape, but I got to get up at 6 a.m. I have a flight tomorrow, and I got to do some work before I go to bed, so it's...
All right.
I did give you the chance to find... I did give you the option.
Well, I didn't know there was going to be all these caveats coming with it on tonight.
Well, it's just... It wasn't supposed to be, but then...
Yes.
My family's awful, and my children are the worst. So, there you go. My wife's not awful. The kids are awful, though. So, yeah. That's that. All right, here we go. What time is it? Okay. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with...
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. For folks who were watching on YouTube last week, I want to apologize for Tom and I being out of sync. I did a thing behind the scenes that got our lip sync really, really good, but then Tom and I in the video ended up being like I was talking over Tom a lot because I was like ahead of Tom in the video version. So it was either that or have the worst lip sync ever by altering the audio. So anyway, it happened for 1 week. Hopefully this week, Tom and I are back into synchronization. And I might have to do more audio editing to make our lips line up, but whatever. That's the way life goes.
Since I'm not on the video, it should be
easy. Lip sync will be easy this week because, if you come over to YouTube this week, Tom is a logo, and, he's doing some different things. Different microphone for Tom this week, too, so it might sound a little different, and it definitely looks a little different there over, that way. That way. Looks different.
Much handsomer, I'm sure. All right, let's get into this. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask by emailing us a question at avrant.com. Go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment, facebook.com/avrant podcast. You can watch our YouTube videos over at youtube.com/avrant.
That's it.
Yeah. Reach us directly, Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter's at avrant_Tom. And yes, I sound like I'm whispering because I'm trying not to clip.
Yes, different microphone, prone to clipping.
Yeah, it was fine earlier today. It's just Reaper, whatever. I can't figure out how to lower the input volume. I don't understand. I'm pushing the slider down. It's not... What if I press... Oops, I pressed a button.
Oh, yeah, try now. Great. Yeah. Fiddle with stuff now, Tom. This is the time to do it.
This is
wonderful.
This is 100% the time to do it.
Yep.
Shut up.
You tried every slider before we began this stream.
Yeah, that's right. And now I'm going to try the rest of them. Good. And this thing keeps changing screens for some reason.
Well, while you're doing that, maybe I'll go ahead and thank our listeners of the week. First of all, if anyone would like to donate with a one-time donation, come to avrant.com, and over on the right-hand side it says Support AV Rant with a logo of a cup of coffee, and that'll take you to PayPal, where you could use your PayPal account or just a credit card if you don't want to sign up with PayPal and give them all your vital information. So, we didn't get any donors that way this week, but that's all right because we do have Patreon supporters. We have 85 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast, and that's like a automatic monthly donation. You choose the amount. It's like a voluntary subscription. So thank you very much to our 85 patrons.
And if you can't support us financially, we understand. Just let us know what you did to support us, and we'll be very happy to mention you on our podcast as one of our listeners of the week. So Janan went to Accessories for Less and let them know that his Denon X4400H purchase was thanks to our recommendation, and James House of Cards C. Very unfortunate nickname. We need to change that.
He is sticking with it. He is sticking to his guns. He likes it. It has nothing to do with the show.
I don't remember. I guess there was a House of Cards at some point.
Yeah,
Is
no,
that what happened?
we said something about it's like he's living in a house of cards because I think he has so many subs or something or other. I don't remember. It was something along those lines.
Okay, that sounds like us.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, James House of Cards reached out to Accessories for Less as well to say how we pointed him their way and how happy he is with their quality, prices, and service. I did see that email. That was very nice. So thank you, James, and thank you, Janan.
That's right, Janan and James. Thank you very much for talking us up to Accessories for Less.
All right, I do have some news. I was on the podcast earlier today. One of the many things I was doing today, and instead of getting ready for my trip, I was on another podcast. And you're going to say, "What podcast were you on, Tom?" And I'm going to say,
"What podcast, Tom?"
Don't exactly know.
You don't know what podcast you were a guest on.
It was Resi Week. It used to be something else, but now it's Resi Week.
Yes.
So Resi Week is about residential installers and stuff, and they were talking about some. I think we talked about only two things because I'm long-winded, but one of them was a Meridian streaming box, which is completely. They're like, "Hey Tom, do you think it's niche?" I'm like, "Yeah." You think it's niche? I don't think anybody needs this. I mean, literally, I don't think anybody needs this thing if you don't own Meridian speakers. And the people who own Meridian speakers, guess what? You don't need it either. I didn't say exactly that, but one of the other guys was talking about how this thing does high res audio. And it's so much better than because if you look at Bluetooth, it won't even send over Bluetooth. Won't even send over the bass. I'm like, yeah, that's not right.
That's not true. That's not how audio compression works.
I know. But he's probably thinking of or talking about some old codec, and I'm like, if you've got any phone on the planet except for an iPhone, you can use aptX and you'll get full CD quality. And if you don't have that, then you can do this with your iPhone and just send it over AirPlay. And you're gonna get full CD quality. So anything beyond CD quality is a waste. I'm like, I'm on this podcast talking. They're not gonna have me back, I don't think. But the custom installers are like, yeah, this is really good. People really want this. And then they asked me if, or they asked us if people. The youth today weren't going to be able to appreciate it. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, they always like to rag on the millennials who aren't kids anymore. By the way,
there are millennial grandparents.
Now. Yes, there are. Yes,
those exist.
Yep.
But anyways, it was fun. It was fun. I don't know when they'll come out. Probably this week or whatever. But whatever. It was fun. And they're all really nice guys. And Tim Albright, who was hosting the show, is a great guy. So check it out. It's a half-hour podcast or less. I mean, I think we had 4 things we were supposed to talk about. We only talked about 2 because we went on. But unlike us, who will just go on for 2 hours anyways. No.
All right, Resi Week. Check Tom out.
All right. Via Michael and Carl, Disney announced their Disney Plus will launch in Canada and in the Netherlands. Apparently, geographically not close, but in spirit the same place. On the same day as the U.S., November 12th. Prices are $8.99 a month Canadian and $6.99 a month euros, I guess, in the Netherlands. Australia and New Zealand get it a week later on November 19th for $8.99 Aussie and $9.99 New Zealand, whatever their
dollars. They use dollars.
Okay, anyways. No bundles announced, though, and no word on Hulu yet. Disney also announced that right from day one, Disney Plus will be available on all iOS and Android devices, Apple TV, Android TV, Xbox One, and PS4, and the Roku.
So Amazon Fire is being left out.
I don't see Chromecast on there anyway.
Chromecast will work too. Yeah, because Android. So anything that works on Android can be Chromecasted.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
No Amazon Fire. Sometimes things are fun.
Yeah. CBS and Viacom have agreed to merge to a merger deal to form Viacom CBS. Oh, jeez, they really phoned that one.
They racked their brains to come up with that name.
But ours is more important. But Mars is more important.
They didn't go alphabetical, so somebody won.
They used to be one company, but split back in 2006, notably separating the TV versions of Star Trek owned by CBS and the movie versions of Star Trek owned by Viacom, owned Paramount. Now they're getting back together as long as the deal is approved to fight all the other major studios and their streaming services.
perhaps much more will be coming to CBS All Access in the not too distant future.
Other than just Star Trek. Anyways, Viacom's major brands are Paramount, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, and MTV, which no longer plays music. CBS also owns Showtime, so you got that going for you.
That's going to be their stable. Everybody, you got HBO Max. That's going to be Warner Brothers stuff. Everything Warner Brothers. Then you got NBC Universal. So that's, they're all going to be together. They're going to launch their streaming service in 2020. So all the majors going to have their own individual streaming thing. Everybody give us $7 to $15 somewhere in that range.
So Plex is killing their Plex Media Player for Windows and Mac, a new desktop app that's much more similar to their web player and lacks the Plex Media Player's TV mode, will become the only Plex player for computers. So if you still want to use Plex on a TV with a traditional remote, the Plex team is saying it's time to switch to a streaming box or a smart TV and ditch the home theater PC. So screw you guys.
So, I mean, I'm not really using a home theater PC attached to any of my large screen televisions anymore, but regardless, I hate this because it forces you to use a mouse. You can't just keyboard your way around in the web player. And I hate using a mouse for Plex, because sometimes I do watch content on my laptop or on my desktop, and having to use a mouse with Plex, I don't know, step backwards. So I'm disappointed by this, but who knows? Plex constantly changes, so maybe if enough people complain, they don't have to necessarily bring back the media player app, but if they could at least give us keyboard control in this new app, I would much appreciate that. That is my request.
Move from dock. Okay. TCL announced their new 8 Series 4K TVs for the USA coming in October. That's just right around CEDIA. I guess a month after CEDIA. These are the first consumer displays to use mini LED backlighting. The 65-inch model will cost $2,000 and uses over 15,000 mini LEDs divided into 768 local dimming zones. That doesn't divide equally? Does
20.
that divide?
Oh, well, it's 15,300 something or other.
That's why you says over 15,000.
Over 15,000.
Okay,
it's a strange little number. So 768 times 20. So 20, it's a cluster of 20 mini LEDs for each of the 768 individual zones in the 65-inch model.
Right, and the 75-inch model will cost $3,000. It's just 25,000-ish mini LEDs divided into 1,000 local dimming zones. 8K models, which have already been announced in Europe and Asia, will be coming in 2020. So that's a lot of zones, and I like this.
That is the most zones that we've come across so far, because even the Sony backlight master drive, which is not using mini LEDs, it was using regular-sized LEDs, one per zone in the Sony backlight master drive, didn't have this many in those sizes. So this is upping the number of zones.
It's just more things to break in these things. But anyways, both the 2019 8 Series and 2019 6 Series are using the QLED branding and use quantum dots for wide color. And TCL is introducing an app for iPhones and Google Pixel phones to use the phone's camera for color calibration purposes. Terrible idea, but whatever.
And they did say it's only going to be from 50% stimulus upward because it isn't reliable enough in lower light conditions. And they're limiting it to just iPhones and specifically Google Pixel and no other Android phones at the moment because they need to know with pretty good certainty what the reaction of the cameras will be, so they need to keep it predictable. But an interesting idea nonetheless. You might be able to at least adjust the upper portion without hiring a calibrator,
which you didn't need to do in the first place, but whatever. AVRant listener Patrick wants to know why each mini LED isn't its own local dimming zone.
Yes, so rather than making this a separate question, this is all tied together, and I thought I'd throw this in there. Well, Vincent Teo from HDTV Test, first of all, he put up a video regarding this USA announcement release, but prior to that, going back a month or two, he was at the European and Asian launch event, and they actually detailed their plans. TCL detailed their plans for mini LED in the coming years. So they were mentioning how, in this first iteration, they're still using current chipsets, current algorithms for the local dimming, and it doesn't really have the processing power this year to make use of individual. And also, they have to change the way each mini LED is powered, because you're talking about
Right.
a huge number of them. So right now, these clusters of 20 or 25 are sort of sharing one little power area.
I would think they have to be isolated too. So you've
Right.
got that to consider as well. So it's a
So
completely different design.
TCL put up a roadmap at their announcement in Europe and Asia, saying that in 2021 they're hoping to bring that up to 3,840 zones in the 65-inch version, basically 4 mini LEDs per zone, and that they would be switching over to using a thin film transistor grid to power the mini LEDs. So it's almost like a second LCD back there, except that it's directly powering the LED backlight. And then in 2023, they're expecting that they'll be able to power each mini LED individually and have all 15,000 or 25,000 zones that way. So it is coming along, Patrick. It won't be here this year or in 2020, going by that roadmap, but it's on the way. They have that idea in mind.
I figured out what this background noise is. It's the fan. I usually turn it off.
Very most likely.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry about that, guys. All right, some comments here. Jeremy.
So this was like novel length, but I've tried to bullet point it.
These are a considerable number of bullet points. We might just get through this. And
Let's try to rattle through it.
Anyways, wanted to share a full rundown of the theater he has just completed. Took about a year, and he says our advice along the way was vital. He snagged clearance, Focal, Electra B, and BE. No, is it BE or
BE for beryllium? Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. I knew that, but I don't know if they pronounced it. How they pronounced it. Anyways, and the Aria series speakers, all powered by Emotiva 11-channel amp and the Marantz AV 7704 Pre-Pro subs, or a pair of REL S5 super high outputs. Hope you got that Emotiva on one of their not sales that they have all the time. He started with the JVC's X790 projector, but upgraded to an NX7 as soon as it was available. He highly recommends doing so if you can afford it. He thinks the genuine 4K JVC projectors offer a number of small improvements, but they all add up to a noticeably better image. He took our advice and went with a white 135-inch screen rather than some sort of gray or ambient light projecting 150-inch. That was by far the correct choice, he says, which is true. Pretty much always. This is a completely blacked out room. When you see the pictures, if you're not seeing them already, there's absolutely no reason to have a light projecting. I mean, unless you're worried about the reflection off the whites of your eyes. So a fiber optic HDMI cable from on price that we've mentioned finally got everything working reliably. He went with Sherwin-Williams paint, and he wound up with their tricorn black. So in a fully flat finish, it's tremendous for light control and actually looks really sharp in person. But we're right. Don't ever touch the walls.
Or you'll be repainting that section.
Yeah. From the pictures, we might be surprised that he didn't run wires or cables inside his walls. Instead, he ran crown molding and well-placed black curtains, including a skirt around the bottom of his walls. Oh, I didn't even notice that skirt, but there it is.
There is. There's a little black skirt of curtains all around the bottom perimeter of his room. That's a good idea.
This is my kind of lazy idea. I like it.
It's a great idea. It blends right in. And it looks, it looks good. It doesn't look like you're doing it in particular to hide wires. It just looks like it's part of the decoration, honestly.
Yeah. So he highly recommends this idea as it makes it so much easier to change any wires. He wanted to make a specific carpet recommendation, Mohawk Arrow?
I think it's just Arrow. Yeah.
Aside from the marketing checkboxes of being hyperallergenic, VOC free. What is VOC?
Volatile organic chemicals.
All right. Didn't know I had to worry about that with carpet, but let's go. And recyclable, which I guess you could do someday. What Jeremy loves about it, and it took him a long time to find this option, is that it can be installed over existing hardwood or tile floor without damaging the existing finish. It has an integrated thick pad underneath, and the room can go back to being hardwood at any time. So if you have a hardwood floor, maybe this is an option. So put that in our bag of tricks.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to save money with a DIY projector shelf. He says for a big, heavy projector like JVC, get the Chief or Peerless mount we've recommended. It wound up being so much easier and less hassle with the perfect alignment thanks to those worm gears. One of his top recommendations, if you've got a fully enclosed dedicated theater like his, get a small portable HEPA filter and just let it run whenever the theater is not in use. It is a small dollar investment, and now he's got no dust. Even in the bright projector beam, he can barely find a speck. Think about that, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
So he says, talk to Gick, as we've often recommended. He found them super helpful, and with about $2,000 worth of panels, he thinks the performance of his room went from pretty great to ridiculously great. So that's the kind of improvement I would expect. So good. His dual REL subs have an odd connection arrangement that necessitates keeping them both up front. He's happy with it, but we all know no theater is ever truly finished, so moving subs or maybe more subs are still under consideration. And he's dreamed about having a theater like this since college, and partially because of our advice, plus a lot of his own sweat and hard work. He built it for a price he could afford, so he says he's a listener for life.
That is the tale, and congratulations, Jeremy. It's a wonderful looking theater, and I am certain it sounds fantastic given the products that you have put in there. And I love that. I love that curtain skirt idea. That we are definitely going to be stealing that.
That is something that we will mention. Dan and Mike both mentioned how getting their JVC projectors to turn off using a Hdmi remote hasn't always worked. Adding additional power off commands to the device power off menu worked for both of them. So I guess last week or the week before, or maybe both, somebody was talking about that. So good.
Yep. So instead of just saying power off and then power off again, they're like power off, then power off again, then power off again, and then again, and maybe a couple more times. And after all of that, it does work.
So it's basically like my puppy. Listen to you when she wants to. There you go. All right, let's get into the questions here. Zach bought a Denon X4300H from Accessory Less back in January 2017. It worked well out of the box, so he didn't worry about doing any firmware updates at the time. But recently, he figured he should check if there was a newer firmware for him to install, and he discovered that his unit's networking hardware doesn't seem to be functional. Plugging the Ethernet cable straight into his router and checking the network settings showed everything grayed out, and the IP address as 000. He tried attaching the included Wi-Fi antenna to see if he could connect that way, and even tried 2 different routers, but no connection. So he checked on Denon's website, and there is indeed a newer firmware that he could download onto a USB stick. But when he follows the instructions for manually updating the firmware via USB, it says to go to Online Music Source within the home menu and then select USB. When he goes to Online Music Source, a blue circle just spins forever on the screen, and he cannot proceed any further. The little blue circle of death.
Yep.
Everything except Hios still functions just fine, and he isn't using Hios at all, so is it even worth bothering to trying to connect in for a possible repair? It was a refurbished unit from Accessories for Less with a 1-year warranty, and that was 2.5 years ago, so what do we think? I just don't poke it. That's kind of my reaction.
I would certainly just try giving them a call, because that doesn't hurt anything. And if they're like, it's going to cost X amount of dollars and that is more than you want to spend to get it repaired, then, things are still functioning okay for you because you aren't really using any of the network features at the moment. And I mean,
he
usually
tried the turn it off, turn it back on thing yet either, though.
He did I think he mentioned he tried a full factory reset.
Did he do okay?
Yeah.
So that would be that's the only thing they're going to tell you to do is do a full factory reset, and if that doesn't, they're gonna tell you to send it in.
And the possibility of a network card it could literally just be physically detached in some way, because that is not impossible.
That's sort of what it sounds like.
Yeah. Or if it's not that, something in the networking side of things has gone completely wrong. I mean, that should be entirely repairable. But it might cost some money since it's out of warranty. But I would give them a call, because that can't hurt. The worst they can tell you is that it's going to cost some amount of money, and then you will decide. Yeah. So I wouldn't say avoid calling them for some reason, but
yeah,
there's not really much else to be done here, right?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a phone call, and then you're going to say, I ain't paying for that, and that's going to be into that.
Probably.
Tom, is this ended that right? Yeah, Tom. Tom says he's a longtime AV Rant listener. He just completed the build of his new house with a dedicated home theater. He's using a Sony 285 ES genuine 4K projector on a 150-inch screen. He's running a 9.4.4 configuration, powered by a Denon X8500H with triad speakers and SVS subs. Yes, 4 of them. 2 rows of elite home theater recliners, and it's all run via simple control.
This is a beautiful looking theater. Those are the exactly same seats as the ones I have.
Oh yeah.
Even with the right down to the flat bottom of the seat instead, because they have an option where it's like a 2 cushion seat with a different firmness in the middle versus around it. But he's got the flat version, which is the one I have, which is a little less expensive and probably the reason that both of us went that way. But yeah, the exact same seats, but beautiful looking theater. Looks like all in wall for the 2 sets of side surround speakers, soffits overhead to hold his lighting so that the don't have to worry about running wires and that stuff. And one detail, it's a little bit small in the image, but it looks as though he put up absorptive panels on his side walls, and then instead of having the regular fabric that wraps around the panel be the printed image, it looks like he has a separate piece of fabric for each of his printed images, so he can change them, right? He's basically got a normal black absorptive
they look like
panel.
banners.
Yeah.
That's what they look like.
But it looks like he's got a normal black absorptive panel, and then he's put, well, it definitely looks like fabric, because it's a little bunched up on one of the ones in the front there. So I quite like that idea, because instead of it being one panel that is permanently wrapped with a printed image, now you could change it out by just swapping fabrics on top of the black background. That's a cool idea.
It's a huge theater too. 2 rows
Looks
of
quite
seats.
large, yes.
Yeah,
Spacious.
Four, at least 4 wide.
Mm-hmm. With ample room for walkways on either side.
Yeah. So he's going through some boxes and found some 3D glasses. They worked with the Sony projector, and it was the best 3D experience he's ever had. It set the bar low, but whatever. Enough that he now wants to invest in some 3D movies to add to his collection. He knows Rob is still a 3D fan, so what are some of the best 3D movies for him to check out? Well, Avatar is
that is on the list.
That's got to be one of the best ones. I'll tell you what, I got, this sounds stupid. I got Shadow of the Colossus remaster for the PS3.
Oh, right, game,
and
yes.
The game is remastered in 3D. You can play that in 3D. So
actually, quite a few games, even if you're using 3D like processing inside of the display itself, quite a few games do quite well, especially racing games. Racing games work quite well being like fake 3D'd, but it still works really well. First thing I'll mention is that actually Wikipedia, of all places, has probably the best and most comprehensive and well up-to-date list of 3D Blu-ray releases. So if you just want to see what is available in 3D Blu-ray, check out Wikipedia's list of 3D Blu-ray releases. That's the resource I always use. I'm going to mention the ones that I think are actually enhanced very much by 3D to the point that I think it's like part of the movie to see them in 3D, that it's actually better to see them that way. Avatar is one of those. Hugo was intended to be seen in 3D.
Which one's Hugo?
That's the one with Chloe Grace Moretz and God, who am I forgetting? It's all about like 1930s, 1940s movies, but it was meant to be seen in 3D. Dread 3D should be seen in 3D.
Okay.
I think Gravity. Gravity, I think, is like vital to see in 3D.
I still haven't seen that movie.
Yeah, definitely that one. And then in the Marvel movies, Ant-Man and Doctor Strange, I'm like...
Doctor Strange makes sense. And Ant-Man also makes sense based on...
To me,
those were not filmed in 3D. Those were 3D conversions.
Those were conversions, but they were really well done, and it adds to the narrative of the movie to see it in 3D, in my opinion. So that's well worth it. The new Ghostbusters... it makes use of 3D in some innovative ways, like they actually have things come outside of the black bars, so it really comes out of the screen. And also Blade Runner 2049, in particular, that scene where the hologram lady is like overlaying herself on top of the real lady.
Right.
It's, seeing that in 3D makes a significant difference. There's some others there where I'm like, I think they're really good in 3D, but not necessarily vital. I mean, almost anything computer animated looks really good, but in particular, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, I think, was one of my favorites. Tron Legacy looks very good in 3D. Pacific Rim, Edge of Tomorrow, and all of the Planet of the Apes movies look good in 3D.
Of these, Edge of Tomorrow.
Okay.
The Marvel movies, I don't really remember loving or hating Ghostbusters, which is weird. And the Planet of the Apes movies, I would watch again.
Oh, they're very good.
Dread, of course, as well.
Yep.
Avatar, Hugo, Tron Legacy. God help me, I'm never watching that again. But we'll see. All right. And I did like Blade Runner 2049, but holy moly, is that a slog.
It was meant to be. The original Blade Runner is not fast-paced.
No, it is not. It's fine. I understand that, but it's still a pain to get through. You know, what's his name? Just staring blankly at the screen with no emotion.
Ryan Gosling?
Yes, for an entire movie. It gets old. Chad Chad is using a Denon X6400H with a 7.2.4 configuration. When he's watching something that's actually Atmos or DTS-X, it's easy. The receiver automatically goes into Atmos or DTS-X listening modes and all is well. But how can he make sure he's using the best listening mode when he's watching Irregular 5.1 or 7.1 content or listening to 2-channel music? He would like to use some sort of upmixing so that all 11 of his speakers are being put to use. When he checks the front panel or uses the info button, the receiver seems to be defaulting to Dolby Surround most of the time. But if he presses the various listening mode buttons, there are other options available. Which is best? And didn't we see something about using game mode for upmixing? How does he do that? Okay, so yes, they're all kind of different things, and it should input to input remember which one you chose last.
Yeah, per input, so per like HDMI input,
Right.
and then also per codec. So whatever codec is coming in, if you have manually, like let's say for a regular vanilla Dolby Digital 5.1, you have manually selected, who knows, maybe you applied DTS Neural X upmixing to the incoming Dolby Digital 5.1 signal. Maybe that's just the one that you preferred. It should remember that for that input whenever a vanilla Dolby Digital 5.1 signal gets coming into that input, but not necessarily for other HDMI inputs, and then for every different type of codec, so regular DTS, Dolby Digital Plus, True HD, DTS HD Master Audio, all of them, it'll remember whatever you set it to. Now, if you want it to do it all automatically, there is that option on the Denon and Marantz's. On the remote, there are the colored buttons, the green, red, blue, yellow buttons. Those double as the sound mode buttons when you're using the remote to control the AV receiver. And if you actually press the yellow pure button, it'll first, of course, go to direct, and then it'll go to pure direct, but on the third press, it'll go to auto. And the way that the Denon and Marantz's default under auto is to always use either Dolby Surround Upmixer, which will put sound into all 11 of your speakers, or DTS Neural X if it's a DTS codec. That's what the auto will do. So it will always try to use all 11 of your speakers, which is what you said you wanted to do. It'll simply default to using Dolby Surround Upmixer for Dolby signals and DTS Neural X Upmixer for DTS signals, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with either one of those upmixers. The Dolby Surround has gotten pretty good reviews, and it makes sense to use the DTS, but the DTS ones, you would think that would make the most sense. You could just sit there with your remote, and every time you try out, listening, every once in a while you're watching stuff, just hit it and the info button, see what it says. Like,
right,
it's saying this. I wanted to, let's try the different ones. Then you'll whatever. But I would just go with whatever.
But what I would say about the auto setting, though, is that it defaults to using the movie version of those upmixers. Right. It'll be the movie version of Dolby Surround Upmixer. It'll be the movie version of DTS Neural X. So when we've mentioned using the game version of these upmixers, there is the blue game button under the sound mode buttons. So there are 3 different versions of each of these upmixers. The Dolby Surround Upmixer has a movie, a music, and a game version of it. The DTS Neural X Upmixer has a movie, a music, and a game version of it. And they do upmix things slightly differently, depending on whether you choose it using movie, music, or game. In movie mode, it more or less adds a little bit of reverb into the surround channels. In the music mode, it sort of spreads everything across the front 3, the left, center, right. It spreads those. And then in the game mode, it is the most discrete. It tries to lock sounds into individual speakers, and that's why I actually prefer the game version, in particular of DTS Neural X. So if you want what I like to use, if I'm watching movie content, I like to use the Neural X upmixer, particularly because I use front wide speakers, and that's the only upmixer that puts any sound into front wide, so I have a slight addition to that. But nevertheless, I like the Neural X upmixer for movie content, particularly pressing the blue version of it, the game mode version of it. It does tend to goose the overhead speakers more than the Dolby Surround upmixer. It makes them louder and more noticeable. You might like that, you might not. For music, I certainly prefer the Dolby Surround upmixer. No question about that. And I would probably, I don't know, it doesn't particularly matter. I mean, I would try all 3 because there's no right or wrong answer. I don't tend to usually use the music mode because I don't like that weird spread that it does across the front. So I tend to stick with game mode no matter what.
All right. Matt, this is from Australia. Matt is having a very large, fully custom apartment designed and built for him. The space as a whole is in a regular shape, sort of looks like an airplane wing. It's all floor-to-ceiling glass for the outer walls, hardwood throughout, and a coffered ceiling. The great room, where he will have an L-shaped couch and a TV viewing area that's completely open to the kitchen and dining area, is over 45 feet long. The width varies because of the irregular shape, but is approximately 25 feet wide on average. There's a large, solid concrete support pillar pretty much right where he'd like to put his seats. So the L-shaped couch is basically shifted to the left where the 85-inch TV and front speakers will be mounted. This is a very strange house.
Well, it's not a house, it's an apartment.
It's an apartment, right?
No, I mean, it's large. I am certain this is going to be luxurious. I'm certain this is the type of thing that you are going to see in a magazine.
Yeah.
I have a side comment. I mean, this is not to deride anybody who does this because obviously this is being done for style and this is being promoted by architects and that. But I do question, since there's no way that this is inexpensive, I do question the idea of creating spaces that are not particularly pleasant to actually live in and day out. I mean, they look fantastic. They're wonderfully clean and all the lines, I'm sure, are wonderful. And there's tons of light from these floor-to-ceiling windows through the entire space. But like actually living in those places day to day, it's...
I'm going to be honest, I walk around in my underwear a whole bunch.
Right.
You know? I mean, when I'm doing yard work like I did this morning, I go into the garage, I take all my dirty, filthy, sweaty clothes off, and I walk naked all the way to the bathroom. So that's floor-to-ceiling windows, probably not going to work. Though, after living in Australia and seeing the kind of style that's generally that people generally like there, I can understand this, and you're right, it's probably going to look fantastic. And honestly,
it's going to echo like crazy.
It will be a little bit on the echoey side, but that's okay. We can do something with this. So what am I looking at here? I'm seeing a picture. So here's the whole picture of the whole thing.
You're seeing,
and then there's the kitchen, dining, scullery, which is that where they put the skulls? I don't understand what that is.
Isn't that usually called a spice kitchen? It's like a separate kitchen where you can keep your spices and not contaminate.
Like a walk-in closet. Right. Okay, and this is the seating area kind of off to the right there.
Yeah, so we can see there's a circle just to the right of his seating. There's a zoomed-in view that we're looking at, and that is a big support column that cannot be moved, and it means that the seats have to be pushed over to the left.
And
so
I guess the TV is going to be in an indentation.
Yeah, so there's an extra detailed one that he sent in where actually that's coming up in section A, so we can describe that now.
Oh, okay. Here we go. All right, so obviously we'll be saying this place is an acoustical nightmare. He'll have a large rug for the TV area and drapes over the windows on the right, but only for the portion from the TV to the seats. The coffered ceiling has been designed for a look that uses solid plaster. Is there any such thing as a solid plaster finish material that absorbs sound without perforations? Anything else that can be done in here as far as acoustics go? Freestanding panels all the way around you.
I sincerely don't think that was in the plans. God, I mean,
no,
the first thing.
Wise, there is nothing that plaster. It's just going to reflect. There's no absorption there. You can't. There's no soft plaster.
I know. I mean, you could. There are like those sort of like wood grid slat type of things. You often see them in really high ceilinged office spaces or warehouses that act as diffusers. Right, you can put absorption above that to give an interesting look. But if you've already got a coffered ceiling being built, I'm guessing he doesn't want to have wood grids with absorption above them, changing the look of what was planned.
What's a coffered ceiling? Because I don't know.
It's like a grid, like that look when you like wide chunky grids everywhere on the ceiling, like soffit grids running everywhere.
Oh, okay.
That type of look, right? So I mean, like my instinct. So I am not aware of any type of material that looks like plaster, like a solid plaster finish, but somehow absorbs sound. I don't know how that would really be possible.
I mean, it would be something that would have to be specially designed. I mean,
it would have to be like a foam or something that looks like plaster, but it would be a faux finish,
but
which
still,
I mean,
it would have to.
I would look into and consider, because I mean, I don't know where else besides the ceiling in something designed this way that you are going to put, like, where are you going to put soft absorptive things in something that's been designed this way? Other than the ceiling. The ceiling to me is the candidate. I mean, if there is a way to, instead of just having it literally be hard, flat plaster, this is a designed ceiling that has a look to it. Could it be lined with, textured foam? I mean, not that we think foam is the greatest compared to insulation, but when you're going for...
we'll take anything.
We'll take anything that absorbs
sound. I mean, like you said, this is going to be a very reflective space. That's true. But the fact that it's so big, I mean...
And irregularly shaped, at least it's not all parallel surfaces.
That's right. It's going to kind of like... What's going to end up happening is you're going to be watching TV and somebody will say, I can't hear the TV. And somebody, 30 feet away at the other side of the room will go, will you turn the TV down, please?
Right. Yeah. There's going to be... Weird, unpredictable things going on
in the room.
I mean, anywhere that you can put something absorptive, do so anywhere at all, whether that is furnishings, even if it's big leafy plants to try and get some diffusion going on. I mean, anything to break up the sound waves in here.
This kind of, let me just like completely outside the box here. Talk about that. I know you've got a coffered ceiling. I know you've got this special whole look thing going on. But what if this area over here, this one little area, was like sort of unique and had its own little look? And the look I'm thinking of is more akin to, a concert hall, like not an auditorium, but like a, someplace you would go to listen to opera.
Right.
So I'm thinking like these wood slats ceilings that are sort of like angled and dropped in, and
that sort of wave pattern that they sometimes use. Yeah.
And that sort of thing. And I'm thinking like that sort of style only in this corner. Now I'm telling you, I fully expect this guy to say you have lost your mind. So I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility. Like,
right, something that still looks architecturally interesting and fits the idea of an acoustic space that you might see in a very high-end venue.
Right.
And only in this sort of
honestly,
TV area.
Freestanding panels all the way around you. I mean, it's not outside the
Well, because sometimes people have like what do you call them, like dressing shades, right?
Right.
So instead of that, you make them gobos, right? They're freestanding curved areas, but they're made out of absorptive panels.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm even thinking like custom made, like curved. Like you would go and have a frame made of curved material,
right,
and then have that whole thing be absorptive,
and then that kind of visually separates the dining area from the TV viewing area. Yeah, something,
right.
anything.
Let's just get way out there because apparently this dude's got lots of funds here. I mean, like the whole thing, they're all right next to each other, but at an angle. And you walk in, you press the button to turn the theater on, they all close. Like an interlock, so that the theater area becomes sort of separate. That would be, ridiculous, but awesome.
Yep. In any case, those are ideas that we have for the acoustics now. I think I'll talk about my idea for the seating when we talk a little bit more about the way the TVs are set up and that.
Yeah, so, the only other thing I'm going to say is as much absorption as you can put in this room in places that...
Including if it's like the bays that are created by that coffered ceiling, if you can have some layer... even if it's cotton batting covered by fabric up there.
I'm thinking even like things like you have a vase, or a vase, maybe, whatever, that you want to display, and it's on a stand. If that stand... that stand should be
the pedestal,
a wood frame, and then you should just shove it full of insulation and cover it with fabric and call it art stand.
Yeah, if you
Nobody's going to think anything about it, and it's absorption.
If you have an end table with 4 legs and a little shelf below it, then in between the bottom of the upper portion and that shelf, that's all filled with insulation and fabric around it. It looks like it's part of the end table, but it's got insulation in it.
Yeah. All right, so the current plan includes a recessed niche to hold the 85-inch TV and AV gear. The width and placement of this niche was determined by the layout of the bathroom on the other side of the wall. The result is that the seating is not centered on the TV due to the support column to the right of the seating. The distance from the niche to the seating will be about 4 meters or 13 feet. Any comments? I hate niches.
And I don't see the reason for it.
This is so like now you can never own another TV.
I don't understand the need for the need. Now, one thing was in the original plans, the bathroom wasn't quite as large, like the shower stall and the bathtub area weren't quite as large. So those were actually extended a little bit, creating the niche where the 85-inch TV will go. I'm like, just extend all of it. Don't have the niche, keep the extension on the bathroom, but also extend equally the portion that created the niche and just have the TV flat on the wall. I mean, if you really don't want the TV protruding from the wall at all, you could either, just slightly recess the TV, create a very, very tiny little niche for the TV, but I wouldn't do that. I mean, there's wallpaper OLEDs now.
Yeah, I would have a flat wall here.
Yeah.
I would put the TV where I want it to be, and I would have my carpenter or whomever come in and say, listen, just drywall frame this whole thing.
Right.
With a little false wall
like
there.
Just don't have the niche. You don't need the niche. Just extend the bathroom the entire way.
Don't drywall frame it. Just frame the whole thing in and then fill all that with insulation.
But also, why not move the L-shaped couch closer? You don't need to be 13 feet away. I mean, 13 feet away from an 85-inch TV makes that not that big of a TV. Why not have the seating in front of that column? And I was actually thinking, like right now he's sort of got the short end of the L next to the column and then the long end of the L along the side of the TV area. I'm like, well, rotate that so that the long part of the L-shaped couch is facing the TV in front of the column. The short area is along the right-hand side, and take your two regular seats and move them over to the left, which actually to me makes more sense, like walkway-wise, to have the two smaller seats on the left sharing the space with the kitchen.
Sure.
So,
and that way because the way it is right now, your guests or whoever's watching TV has more of a possibility of having their backs to the rest of the house.
Yeah.
Which I guess in the idea of enclosing this area as its own little space, is in not having distractions from outside come in. I mean, that's sure, whatever. But I think that Rob's right. Move the whole thing a little bit closer. I think makes more sense to me as well.
Yeah.
Boy, I hate niches though, like for real.
Yep, me too.
The proposed audio equipment list is as follows: 3 KEF CI 5160 in-wall speakers up front, 4 KEF CI 200 RR 8-inch in-ceiling speakers for surround and surround backs.
Yep. Well, where else are they going to go?
I don't know. Where else? So they're going to mount them in glass.
Well, no, in the ceiling, in the coffered ceiling.
Honestly, dude, I've seen those transducers that vibrate the glass.
Oh,
this
gosh.
Is one of the very few applications where
that's your surround right speaker? Wow.
Your surround right speaker is the entire right window. All right, 4 KEF. I already said that surrounds around backs. 2 KEF, same things. No. CI 200Q SB 8-inch in-wall subwoofers installed in the niche up front.
That is the current plan.
KEF KAS A500 2x500 watt subwoofer amplifiers. All right, because they're in walls, so they have to have their amplifiers.
Separate amplifiers to go along
Anthem
with them.
receiver, Emotiva amplifier. Okay.
So there's a very rough sketch of the proposed layout. He's got some questions.
Oh, so the subs are in the wall.
In
down.
the wall.
Yeah.
Up front. That is the current plan. 8-inch in-wall KEF subs.
Question 1, will those subwoofers be sufficient?
No, they will not. So here's the thing.
I'm not laughing at you, dude. Believe me. I am not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the size of these subwoofers.
On KEF's own website, they say that you can technically make use of this 8-inch in-wall subwoofer model to get you to either THX Select or THX Ultra, neither of which is actually sufficient for this amount of space that you're dealing with. But what they say to use for THX Ultra is 4 pairs of these 8-inch subs.
8 of them.
8 of them. Not 2, 8 of them. THX Select would be 2 pairs, so you're definitely not even reaching that. And honestly, roughly eyeballing this space, I would say you probably need 32 of them, which I think is getting excessive.
The room. They would have to be all around the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would need at least 60, and I'm thinking probably 32 of them. So I don't think that is a proper solution. And the 2 up front is so woefully inadequate. I mean, these are the same diameter as your surround speakers, sir. Please think of that for a moment. These are not subwoofers. In fact, the monstrous front speakers that you have opted for can play lower than these quote-unquote subwoofers. So there's a whole bunch of things here. First of all, you don't need that largest in-wall front speaker model from Kef. They have one size down, which is, I think, the 3160. And for your front 3, I would go with that. And that saves you like half. The 3160s are like half the price of the 5160s, particularly if you move your seat closer, as we're suggesting. Definitely.
Even if you don't, well, I mean,
even if you don't, you don't need to. I mean, at most, you're 13 feet away. You don't need these gigantic front speakers, all right? No. So take all that money that you saved on those. Don't buy these little in-wall Kef subs. Is there any way we can put a pair of PC 4000s in this room, cylinder subs that can be camouflaged in a multitude of ways? I mean, I know they're not in walls. I know it would mean something actually standing up, but you already have like circular support columns. You can make the cylinder subs look like they're part of the architecture if you want to.
You could buy 4 of them and you have 2 stacks. Then wrap the whole thing in fabric. So
honestly,
like
2 PC 4000s probably isn't enough for this space either, but they will come much closer to being adequate than just 2 of these little 8-inch Kefs. I mean, you've got to get rid of these little 8-inch Kefs. Is there any in-wall sub I could recommend you? Well, I mean, RBH does make a dual 12-inch.
That's still nowhere near what he's going to need for this place.
Probably not. I mean, that's the only thing I could even.
Sunfire had one for a while too, but
right.
it would not have touched.
I really want you to get a couple of PC 4000s and find a way to integrate their cylinder shape, because they can be camouflaged in all sorts of ways. So on top of that, you went for like the most expensive in-ceiling speakers that Kef offers, which I understand they're part of the same series.
Do we know how tall this place is?
We don't know how tall it is.
So, I mean, that may have something to do with it.
No, but I'm just thinking, you can stay with the 8-inch size, but just go with the Q series. The Q series you're talking, these are your surrounds and your surround backs. They don't need to be the THX Ultra ones for your surrounds and surround backs.
Can I just say you don't need surround backs either?
There's that.
Well. I mean,
I'm not super opposed to it, but
your ability to hear the difference between surrounds that are directly to your left and right and like 15 feet up in the air, and your surround backs, which are 2.5 feet behind that,
right,
and 15 feet up in the air, is minimal. I really feel like all you're doing is making a more diffuse sound up there. So I would not get 4. I would get 2.
Okay.
8-inch, and so we're saving money on that too.
And I don't think
this guy is trying to get us to help him save money.
But
I am.
Why not?
What we're talking about is trying to get you the best sound.
Yes, and the best value.
Which means you don't need these monster speakers up front, because you're not, you're not sitting 20, 30 feet away. To answer the next question, which we will get to right now, does he need the Emotiva amplifier? The proposed Kef speakers are 90 dB at 1 meter efficient, but they're 4 ohm rated. Well, we already asked you to switch them, and you don't. You don't need the Anthem either. Can we go with that? So,
no, but that's not. I don't have any problem with that choice.
Yeah, it's fine. You know what? Honestly, we got to remember too. We're talking about Australia, so it's very easy for us to say, "Oh, you just get spend $500 accessories for less." Get a Denon and Marantz. but that's not the case over there.
No,
so,
that Anthem choice, that's not the overblown model, whatever. That's a perfectly reasonable choice.
Yeah.
So I'm totally fine with that choice of receiver. If you're using it, especially if you move the seats closer, even the smaller model is equally as efficient. Or I think maybe they're 89 dB at 1 meter instead of 90, but it's very, very close. But I mean, do whatever you can to maybe get a pair of PC 4000s here instead. Definitely don't use those in-wall 8-inch KEF subs.
Right. There is no in-wall sub that you're going to find that will do the job. So, okay. So I like KEF as an option here because they're a little bit more of a directed sound. I mean, this is one of the very few times where I could start thinking about, Martin Logan's and, those sort of electrostatic.
If you did that, then you'd need the separate amplifier.
Then you could get that separate amplifier. Look at that. You could spend a bunch of money on those guys. And they have those art panels, whatever they are, or whatever that.
Yeah, they do have the wall mountable Martin Logans now, yeah.
Right, which I've heard before, and they're fine. They are very directional.
Exceedingly directional.
Do not let them tell you that they're not, that they are just like regular speakers and that they will have good dispersion. They do not. But you have a small couch, so I mean, or you have to figure out what works for you, and then you could be fine there. But it will help a little bit with how much sound is being reflected around, because it's going to be more directional, which means there's going to be less frequencies going in all sorts of different directions. I can get behind that.
But I do still like KEF very much as a choice
yes.
here. So I'm not in any way going to try to steer you away from that, because I like that as a choice very much.
So yes, what are our general thoughts on the choices of speaker, subs, receiver, amp in general? I mean, overall, nothing you've chosen except for the subwoofers is outrageously wrong.
No, yeah, those are reasonable choices. We're talking more about how it's set up, maybe stepping down a model here and there, but the subwoofers for sure. That's the main thing.
That's the only thing. That was the only real hiccup in your entire thing. I mean,
unless you're willing and wanting and want to install at least 16 of them, probably 32.
Just have some. Just put a little skirt around the baseboards all the way around this place, and just have them every 3 feet.
They're not cheap either. They're not cheap.
So no, but if you really wanted the speakers up front, fine. No, we're not going to say you did something wrong. It's just we think that you could get away with less.
But yeah, get rid of that niche. You don't need the niche.
Yeah, and the niche has got to go.
Yeah, because I mean, even if you don't want to go with wallpaper OLED, because you want the bigger size, and I don't think they're making the 88-inch in a wallpaper version yet. Samsung's Q90 has like a super flat design where it's really flush against the wall, and that's available in an 82 or an 85-inch size. So,
but I really like the idea of him like building a itty bitty false wall off of his wall, off of that wall, and then doing it. At
least you can have some insulation back there,
and then filling it with insulation. And his speakers are behind there. You didn't see anything. I mean, that's a minimal cost.
Yeah,
and at least gives him some absorption someplace in this place.
Right. Okay.
All right. So Francis. We talked to Francis before when he was expanding to a 7.2.4 Atmos configuration, and when one of his kids pushed the dust cap of one of his SVS PP1000 subs. So, yeah, that's fine. I feel like the PP1000 dust caps getting pushed in was just something that would resolve itself. Just like watch Pacific
It'll just
Rim.
shake loose eventually. I don't know about that. They're pretty sturdy. They're pretty sturdy dust caps.
Anyways, he's using a Marantz SR7010 receiver, dual PP1000s, 4 KEF E301 satellite speakers for Atmos, and his 7 floor-level speakers are all B&W M1 satellites. This is the old pics without the Atmos, but they give us an idea here.
Yeah.
He's got like these little bitty satellite ones and little bitty things, and this other guy's sitting probably about the same distance away, but he wants speakers that are taller than I am.
Right. This is the opposite. He wants itty bitty. It does look like you're about 12, 13 feet away in this, eyeballing it in this photo.
Yeah, it's got an L-shaped couch and everything, so it all sort of works. Yeah. So good. Here we go. He's thinking like a floor-level speaker upgrade now. He's a bit meh on Atmos. Yeah, welcome to my world. But the KEFs do a good job, and his bass is great, but he'd like better dialogue intelligibility and just a more open, effortless sound. The B&W M1 satellites have to be crossed over fairly high, and anytime he gets the master volume above -30 or so, it seems like the front speakers are compressing and not getting as loud as they should, plus they start to sound a bit harsh. That absolutely does not surprise me.
Seems entirely plausible.
So given the size of the speakers and how far away it looks like you're sitting, I'm not shocked at all. I'm not blaming B&W at all. I would expect
there
that
are
of any speaker
physics
size.
involved, yes.
But he doesn't want big speakers. And even though Tom says his 6-year-old and 8-year-old shouldn't be that much of an issue when it comes to selecting speakers, his kids do knock into stuff. Dude, you know what you need? It's a paintball gun. They will only knock into stuff twice before they're like, ow, daddy, that hurts. Yeah, don't knock into stuff. So I wish you could do that. You can't do that. I mean, I'm sure someone does do that. That's a terrible person. So he doesn't want these speakers that are going to be easily knocked off their stands. Towers that don't take up any space would be okay.
Don't know how that happens. Yeah.
They live in the TARDIS. Is that how it works? It's bigger on the outside or inside, whatever. The priority is the front three, though he'd like 5 perfectly matching speakers. He's fine with the surround backs and Atmos overheads being a mismatch for the time being. What can we suggest? Well, I suggest a stand that locks onto your speaker and that you fill with heavy material so that your kids hurt themselves instead of hurting your speakers.
I usually suggest kitty litter. Kitty litter is a great thing to deaden and weigh down.
You pick any speaker, but I like any RBH bookshelf speaker, I think.
But I mean, they're not satellites. They're not as small as what he's using, and it sounds like you want something about as small as what he's already using.
That's the problem right there, dude. It doesn't happen.
It is a bit of a problem. I mean, you could go Klipsch. Klipsch is one option. They do have a satellite speaker package that is well more efficient than those B&Ws.
That's true. I really think you should go bookshelf speakers.
I know.
He doesn't want big speakers. I didn't say they're not big. They're bookshelves.
They're a pretty reasonable size. Even the Impression series are pretty honkin' good size. One that I like, if you don't go Klipsch, is from Focal. It's their SIB speakers, and you can get a package of them over at Accessories for Less for a very decent price. Let's see. Now, you have no choice but to get the teeny tiny little subwoofer that comes along with it, but $420. So really not a bad price for 5 of these satellite speakers and a sub. Now, the reason I really like this is they're not as small as you might think just looking at them, like a lot of Focal stuff. It's not quite as small as you might think, because these are a 5.25-inch driver. And they do play down to 75 hertz minus 3 dB. So if you're thinking you want something that can play a little bit lower so you don't have to use the 120 or 150 hertz crossover and has some higher efficiency and a little bit higher power handling and can contend with your space while still being a satellite speaker option, I like that Focal as an option. Now, it comes with the integrated mounts, which means that any type of stand where it gives you the option to secure to the base of the stand, you would just screw them in like you would any other secure mount. So I think it checks all the boxes. Klipsch would be the other option, in my opinion. Any other thought?
Yeah, I'm looking at these. Which ones did you say they were? The
SIB.
T101s or something?
Oh, from Klipsch's lineup, or?
No, the Focal.
From Focal.
I'm looking at Kef.
Yeah, no, Focal. I've got the link there in the notes.
The Kef ones are thin, but they're wide.
Oh, if you want the Kef T series?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right here.
They don't play tremendously loud, so I'm not sure I would go for that.
All right. Anyways, no, I don't have anything.
All right, Focal or Klipsch?
There used to be that, and I think RBH did make them for a little while, but there used to be that.
Yeah, the E series, but they don't make them anymore.
Yeah, they don't make those anymore.
Nope.
You could find them someplace maybe. All right, Adam. Adam has a 7.2.4 speaker setup and 2 rows of seats. He's using very efficient speakers all around. Power Sound Audio's MT110s up front, HSU HB1 Mark IIs as surrounds and surround backs, and Klipsch R15Ms as top fronts and top rears.
Everything is horn loaded. Everything.
So for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, if you've ever seen a speaker that looks like it's got a big gaping hole where the tweeter should be, that's a horn-loaded speaker. Due to some space limitations, he initially mounted his surround speakers directly to the left and right of his front row of seats. but he actually prefers to sit in his back row most of the time, so his surrounds are in front of his primary listening position. He moves some things around, and now he has the space to put speakers directly to the left and right of his back seats. Now he's thinking he'd actually like to install an additional pair of side surrounds rather than move his existing surrounds. Naturally, he's considering getting another pair of HSU HB1 Mark IIs to match his existing surrounds and surround backs, because quite a few Best Buy gift cards saved up, and they don't sell HSU. Best Buy does sell clips, though. So what if he moved his HSU surround back speakers so that he is using all 4 of his HSUs as side surrounds, and then adding a pair of clips bookshelf speakers from Best Buy as surround backs? Do we think he'd have any issues? No.
That sounds entirely fine to me.
Yeah.
I mean, the likelihood of you ever noticing a timbre mismatch in your surround backs.
Right.
Okay, so I'm the insane person who got 11 ribbon tweeter speakers because I was like, I am going to have matching timbre all around me and overhead come hell or high water. And comparing that, so in the overhead positions and the surround back positions, I'm like, yeah, there was really no reason for me to have done that. That made no noticeable difference. Yeah. I know in my head, yes, they are perfectly timbre matched. I cannot notice it. And that's me. I'm insane.
Right. Well, the things that I would normally worry about whenever you start talking about clips and other speakers is efficiency mismatch.
But in his case,
this is like the only case where it makes where I'm like, yeah, you're going to be fine. It's going to be close enough. So
absolutely,
yes,
yep. I think that's a good idea.
So he knows how we've covered how to wire 2 pairs of side surround speakers, but could we please go over it one more time? So he's absolutely sure. Okay.
Yes, we can.
Red wire out from the receiver to the first pair of surrounds on the one on whichever side.
So let's just for the sake of argument say that the surround pair in front is surround 1 and the surround pair for the back row is surround 2.
Right. So for the left side, you take the surround left channel out of your receiver. You're going to go red wire or to the red on surround 1.
Okay. Red to red as normal.
And then you're going to take the black wire out of that surround 1 to the red wire, right? Red wire.
To the red input of surround 2.
Yeah, so you're going black to red for surround 2.
Yeah, so you're going from speaker to speaker. So from black of surround 1 to red of surround 2, speaker to speaker, there's a wire.
That's right. And then from surround 2, black, back to the receiver.
That's correct.
And that's how you do it.
That is it. Yeah. That's all there is to it.
Again for the other side.
Again on the other side. So it's still, as far as the AV receiver is concerned, it's still red to red and black to black.
Right.
But it's just that it's red to surround 1, black to surround 2, and then the 2 remaining binding posts of the 2 speakers get connected to each other. That's it.
Right. All right, so he's considering a projector upgrade, although he isn't in any rush. He got an Epson 5040 UB right now, and a 160-inch screen.
And that's why he likes to sit in his back row, I'm guessing. I am convinced that's one of those cases, because why did he plan for his surround speakers to be beside the front row? I'm guessing the initial plan was my front row is going to be my primary row, and I'm going for this monster screen, and it turns out a screen can be uncomfortably large if you're sitting close enough to it. So
100%
I think that's happened. That's my suspicion.
We tell you all the time how to figure out what screen you actually like.
But there's the advice out there that says get the biggest screen you possibly can. You'll never regret having more screen versus less screen. I'm like, you can. When you start having to move your neck around to watch a movie, you start regretting how big that screen is. Yeah.
When you get to the flying scenes in any Marvel movie at all and you get nauseated, yes.
Or just have no idea what's going on.
So he'd like to be able to use 4K HDR at 60 hertz, which the 5040 cannot do. With its limited HDMI bandwidth. So, and he'd also like to be happy. Let me try again. And he'd also be happy if he could get a bit more light output. Well, you chose 106. How about this? Get a smaller screen.
Get a smaller screen? Yeah. Yeah.
This solves all of these problems.
It actually,
all at once.
If you go down to a 135-inch screen, suddenly everything you can sit in your front row and everything snaps into place.
Your light output probably gets close to doubling from your what you were experiencing before.
Yeah.
And here we are. All right. So the Epson is very capable in terms of light output, and he's tried all the picture modes, but he does prefer having the color filter in place for HDR content so that he gets the full DCI-P3 color. That filter reduces the projector's light output, though, so he's forced to choose more lumens but less color, or more color but fewer lumens. Dude, seriously, if you had a smaller screen, would fix this problem too. So he's considering the JVC NX5. He's read that even though the Epson claims 2,600 lumens on the spec sheet and the JVC only claims 1,800 lumens on the spec sheet, I swear if the next words I read are the JVC lumens are real, I'm going to slap somebody.
Not quite, but...
when you're using them in HDR mode with a wide color filter in place, the JVC is actually brighter. Is that true? Would the JVC give him everything he is looking for? A smaller screen would give you everything you're looking for, all at once.
Yeah, well, other than the being able to use 4K HDR at 60 hertz, the Epson remaining will not give you that. But so objectively, it is the case that if you are using one of the picture modes where the color filter is in the light path, that similar lamp mode for similar lamp mode, high lamp mode if you're trying to get the most light in either case, the JVC is a little bit brighter, but not tremendously so. We're talking maybe 150 to 200 lumens, which is not nothing. It is enough to be noticeable. Like side by side, you would say, yep, that one that's 200 lumens brighter is brighter, but it's not like a lot. And then on the flip side, if you take the color filter out of the light path, then the Epson is brighter now.
Right.
So the filter that the Epson uses cuts the light more than the filter that the JVC uses, and that's because in the case of the JVC, it's without the color filter, already about 90% of DCI-P3. And then the color filter gets it to like 99. Whereas the Epson starts out quite a bit below DCI-P3 and the filter goes in place and gets it up to into the high 90s. So you could actually quite comfortably use the JVC without the color filter, in my opinion. Which would then give you about 1,600 lumens or so, which is definitely brighter than the 1,000-ish lumens you're getting out of the Epson right now with the color filter in place. So with the Epson, you take the color filter out of there, and it gets up to like 1,800, 1,900 lumens in high lamp mode. So more than the JVC at about 1,600s without the color filter. But with the color filter, the JVC is about 1,200-ish.
So here's my question. Who sits in the front row?
I don't know.
Well, I think that needs to be answered because if the answer is no one, because everybody's uncomfortable. I mean, it could be that he's got family members that have really very poor eyesight or really prefer that big screen. He doesn't prefer
That's
it.
That's possible.
Which is fine. And then I'm like, okay, well then your screen is fine or whatever. But if literally you've got this massive screen, you've got this row of seats that's up front that nobody ever sits in because it's too close to the screen. It's a buttload cheaper to buy a smaller screen and then move yourself forward. Don't need any extra speakers. Don't need a new projector necessarily.
Right. Or you could go to the 5050 UB or something to get the 4K HDR at 60 hertz. Yeah.
So you're saving money like all over the place by doing that. So
because
I know it hurts to say, but I mean, hey, this is a guy who has tower speakers in his home theater and actively wishes he didn't. That's how I feel.
I mean, going from the 1,000 lumens of the Epson with its color filter in place to the 1,200-ish lumens of the JVC with its color filter in place, that's not enough to suddenly make it bright on a 160-inch screen. It just isn't. Right. I mean, side by side, would you notice that it's a touch brighter? Yes, but it's not a lot brighter.
Right. Yeah. So if nobody ever sits in that front row, dude, just get smaller screens. Move. It just fixes everything. Michael was still having issues getting his Bell TV box to work with his new Onkyo TXNR 686 receiver. He and his wife ended up calling Onkyo, and their tech support had them go through a process of holding down the tone button on the front panel of the receiver and then pressing the return button. This brought up an option to the front on the front panel to change the HDMI ports from mode 1 to mode 2, and that finally got things working. Have we heard of this before? Does it limit the HDMI signal in any way? Have we heard of this? This
It
does sound familiar
rings
to
a little
me.
bell, and I tried to find mention of it and came up short of finding mention of it. It rings a bell because somebody
Well,
did talk about
that does sound familiar.
a
Yeah.
thing like this. So, I mean, like in the case of the Denons and the Marantzes, it's actually just in the regular user menu where you can turn on enhanced or standard HDMI mode, which is essentially just limiting it to 10.2 gigabits or all the full 18 gigabits. Now, what I could find looking this up online, this seems a little different, this mode 1 versus mode 2, because the references I could find, because I couldn't find anything in the manual referencing it. So fair enough, because we can't just say read the manual when it's not in the manual. So calling tech support seemed to have been necessary. But the references I could find to it, it seems as though what Mode 2 does, it's odd, but it seems that it limits the chroma to 420.
So it limits the band. It limits how much.
It limits the
is being
bandwidth
used.
somewhat, but not not to the point of it won't pass 4K or it won't pass
Right.
HDR. It just
I mean, you still get all the color.
yeah, because all your sources are 420 chroma, but that
Right,
seems to be what it does. The references I could find anyway. So does it limit the HDMI signal in any way? Well, technically yes, but not in any way that is particularly significant other than if you were using your television as a computer monitor and really cared about colored text on a colored background, because then you would want 444 chroma and not 420 chroma. But for all video sources, they're 420 anyway. So since it got it working, I think he's concerned, does this affect any of his other sources, right? And no, it shouldn't. Your other sources should all be fine with this, unless it's a computer, like an actual PC, sending out 444. So that seems to be the case. It got your cable box working. That's the main thing. And it does ring a bell, but I couldn't find where it was mentioned before.
Yeah, that does sound familiar.
Yeah.
He asked lastly, do we have any info on the Canadian ISP and IPTV provider VMedia? Their prices are attractive and appears to be available where he lives in Newfoundland. Nope.
So I hadn't heard of it until he mentioned it. I looked them up, and okay, so every cable provider has mostly negative stuff being said about them. However, when every review is a 1-star review, like literally not a single review higher than 1 star, that makes me wonder a little bit if this is the way to go, because
So let me just say something about ISPs and people complaining about things like
Right.
this. You know, a lot. I'm a member of the local neighborhood Facebook group, which is I've come here to chew bubblegum and complain, and I'm all out of bubblegum
Right.
group, because that's all they do is complain. And I hear people complaining on there all the time about how their internet's out and blah, 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 blah. And now I have the same internet they have. I have the same service. I have the same everything. The only thing I don't have is I don't use their router. I got my own. And that has made, and Rob encouraged me to do this when I was having problems with the podcast. Remember, I would lose internet like once an hour or something like that. So what I ended up doing is buying my own router. You know, I spent a bunch of money on it, and I didn't buy a cheap one. I bought a good one. And then you take their modem / router device, and you have to basically hack into it. Now, do yourself a favor. Use a device that's either can go over, cellular networks, or get all the pages open that you need on that computer. Because if you don't, you're going to be relegated to looking at it on your phone. And then follow the instructions to basically turn that router modem combo thing that
into only a modem.
Into only a modem, because it can do that.
Yeah, I did the same thing with my service provider.
And now I power cycle my router maybe once a year, maybe twice, when my wife is complaining about it. And really all I have to, it's the computer and not the router, but I go over there and cycle it anyways, just to make her happy. So yeah,
it could be, but I mean, it seems as though nobody has gotten their quote unquote online DVR to work like ever.
Right.
This vMedia provider, which seemed to be most of the complaints. Most of them, it seemed as though the actual internet service was okay.
Right.
It was all to do with the TV, saying that the DVR never works, and also that they just don't reply. There's nobody manning the customer service.
And that's something completely different.
Yeah.
So, and what he sounds like he's doing is trying to save
Yeah.
money, which I completely understand.
So I don't know. I mean, if
there's a service out here called Wow that everybody is signing up for now. You know, all these people who complain about the normal service provider that's out here, and I'm like having no problems with it. I got tons of speed, and they're.
But like vMedia, they don't have any of their own infrastructure. You know, they borrow from whatever other infrastructure the other service providers have. So, which is fine because I mean, all Shaw and Bell and Telus and everybody in Canada, their infrastructure is pretty good, honestly. So that's not the issue. But yeah, it just seems that they're trying to offer things low. Apparently, nobody's manning the customer service branches of it, and nobody seems to be able to get their DVR to work. So, but if it's cheap and easy to give it a trial, then why not? See, you could be not one of the people leaving a 1-star review.
Right. If you don't care about the DVR, then you're good to go. Joe owns a JVC X55, 550 projector. That was the very first model year that technically supported HDR, but they had the known issue with HDR where JVC had to put up a whole web page of settings on how to address how HDR wasn't being shown properly. And rather than deal with all that, Joe just set his 4K sources to output SDR instead, which is completely reasonable.
Yep. That's what a lot of people did.
Yeah. So his X550 developed a light leakage problem, and that is and that is going in for repair under warranty. But he's been told it'll likely be without a projector for about a month. So he decided to try a new NX5 in the meantime, and if he likes it enough, he'll keep it and then sell his X550 when it's back from repair. So what settings should he change on his source devices? An Oppo 203, Apple TV 4K, TiVo Premiere, and Xbox One. Should he just switch the ones that can do 4K HDR into that mode instead of 4K SDR? Yeah, does it have an auto? Just put them all in.
Largely yes, because the NX5 by all accounts, so the NX5, NX7, and NX9 from JVC, they're new ones, they're genuine 4K that have auto tone mapping built into them and seem to handle everything really quite nicely. I haven't seen any reports of really any problems. So in the case of the Oppo 203, setting it to auto for everything would seem to be the easy and very reasonable choice that works really well. The TiVo Premiere, as far as I'm aware, is HD only, so there shouldn't be anything to do in that one. And the Xbox One, I'm not sure if you have a S or an X. In either case, again, like the Oppo 203, setting everything to auto there, or basically to the highest setting available, should work, because the NX5 has the full 18 gigabits per second bandwidth, no problem taking 4K HDR at 60 frames a second, so all of it should work. It does not have variable refresh rate or auto low latency mode, so don't turn those things on in your Xbox, but I don't think the option, I think those are grayed out anyway if it doesn't support it, right. So that's not a problem. So the only one that is a little bit tricky is the Apple TV 4K, because in the case of the Apple TV 4K, it's a weird one where you kind of want to set it for its default video output to basically the lowest setting that you might want to use, which would be 4K SDR. And I would recommend setting it to output 10-bit and 420 chroma. I would recommend doing that because if you set it for that, then any source that is those things will get output that way, and the menu will get output that way. But you have the option in the Apple TV 4K to go into the settings of the picture menu that say match the content's dynamic range and match the content's frame rate, and turn both of those on. And now when something is HDR, it'll kick into HDR mode. When something is 24 frames a second or 30 or 60 or whatever it is, it'll match that frame rate. But the default setting, if you set it to 4K HDR as the default setting, everything will come out as 4K HDR, and a lot of sources are not HDR, so the Apple TV 4K is doing some weirdness inside of it to up it. And I wouldn't necessarily do that. So that's the only weird one.
Okay. Should he swap out his Oppo 203 for a Panasonic UB820? I mean, if you did, you could make a bunch of money on the Oppo.
That's actually kind of true. Yeah. So, I mean...
I don't think I wouldn't. I mean...
Yeah.
I don't think I would.
So here's the thing. The JVC projectors and the Sony genuine 4K projectors, for that matter, are set up to tone map themselves 1,000 nit mastered content really, really well. If the content has been mastered to 4,000 nits, both of them tend to just clip off some detail that is above 1,000 nits. They just kind of clip it off. So you don't really notice that anything is missing because it just got clipped off. It's only if you had something side by side that you might go, oh, there actually was a little bit more detail in there, and it got clipped off. So the Panasonic UB820, some people like it because, of course, it has its HDR optimizer where it will tone map everything down to 1,000 nits and then send that out to the projector, which will then itself tone map 1,000 nit data really, really well. That's the only thing that's different. Now, the vast majority of HDR content has been mastered to 1,000 nits. So it's only for the small handful of discs, because all the streaming stuff out there is 1,000 nit. So if it's your Netflix, your Amazon, your Vudu, whatever, that's already good to go. It's only for the small handful of discs that have been mastered to 4,000 nits. So I don't know. Is that super duper worth it? If you love your Oppo 203, keep it.
I would keep it. Wait until somebody starts modding them with tubes, and
that's already happened
for like 10 grand.
Yeah.
Nick has an older Oppo BDP83 Blu-ray player that has been made region-free. It has developed a problem with its disc tray. It won't eject fully. They contacted Oppo, and they said they would charge a flat $99 price for repair and shipping. Nick is okay with that, and he wants to keep this player because it does an excellent job of PAL to NTSC conversion, which is something he hasn't found in other Blu-ray players. He just wants to know, since it's going in for repair anyway, is there anything else you should have Oppo replace or refurbish while it's there to maximize its lifespan? I mean, just tell them to do a tune-up, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I've never had anybody ask me that they needed to have their Blu-ray player tuned up.
Right. I mean, to me, it's the moving parts, right? The moving parts.
The laser, the whatever the drive. Yeah,
the actual thing that spins the disc, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well, what that would be swapping out the whole optical drive, which might be what they end up doing anyway, just because the tray isn't working. They might just swap out the whole optical drive. Because, I mean, inside of the thing, it basically looks like a PC optical drive without a case around it. That's more or less what it looks like inside of that thing. So they'll probably just swap out the whole thing anyway. They're probably not going to just repair the tray somehow.
That's pretty much all the moving parts.
That's kind of all the moving parts. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about, you have to replace capacitors because they go bad or something. I'm like, no, no. I mean, yes, technically, but no, not in this case. So you could ask them, I suppose. I don't know if maybe the power supply, right? If anything besides the optical drive is going to go bad on a player, it's going to be the power supply. Nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose.
So that would be the only thing I would consider. Yeah.
All right, the last one.
Wow.
Carl.
It is short.
How long have we been going? It feels like forever. Yeah, it's an hour and a half. Shut up. Carl has a Denon X4400H, and he bought. There we go. And he bought some Polk speakers to mount on his ceiling for Atmos. He'd like to have top mills, and due to some placement restrictions, he was thinking those top mills could go just slightly in front of his seats, and then he could have top rears behind them.
That was the thought he had in mind.
I don't do receivers let you do that?
Well, that's what he's asking.
Oh, here we go. The Denon won't let him assign top middles and top rears. Looks like he could do top middles and rear heights, or top fronts and top rears. What's the difference? What should you use? And what are the pros and cons of all the various 0.4 configurations? Is there a big difference when you call a speaker a height instead of a top? Well, it's a placement issue. I mean, there's a
whole bunch of overlap. So. Yeah.
I mean, I would just call it top heights or whatever, rear heights and top middles, and be done with it.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, once you have 4 Atmos speakers, it's really just, is there forward and back and side to side? That's pretty much the only way that it breaks down.
I'll be honest with you, though. This is quite literally the least, I think, effective of the 0.4 configurations that you can do. I mean, I like top fronts, top rears more than I like about anything else. But I've got front heights.
Yeah,
and tell what the heck they're doing, and they're in front of
Yeah,
my
you've got
face.
front heights and top middles. That's what Tom
That's
has.
right. Yeah. So you're asking for top middles and rear heights. I'm like, those rear heights are really not.
No,
I would be shocked if you could ever point them out as doing this.
What I would potentially say to you though is that it has been noticed that in the case of DTS-X, which some of the content you watch might be DTS-X instead of Atmos, that it really doesn't seem to work well with the configuration of top, middle, and rear height. That DTS-X, for whatever reason, the way its algorithm steers things is looking for a front and a rear, be that front heights and rear heights, or front heights and top rears, or top fronts and top rears, or top fronts and rear heights. Regardless, as long as something is named front and something is named rear, then DTS-X seem to work well. Once something is named top middle, it doesn't seem to steer things as well as it really ought to. So it might, just for all the sound is going to be there, regardless of what you call it. But for the sake of DTS-X, if you just label what you're proposing as top fronts and top rears, that will probably work best. That's what I would recommend you do, because your top middles are going to be a little bit in front of you, and then you've got your rear heights. Technically that's what you would have to call them. But if you just call them top fronts and top rears, you're going to get forward to back steering, and that's really what you want.
So the Polk speakers you bought are the OWM3s. You could use their keyhole mounts to have them just basically flush on the ceiling and firing straight down, or he could use the threaded mounting hole to put them on a pivot mount. Should he get the pivot mounts so that he can aim them? No.
Nope. Straight down.
There you go.
That's an easy answer.
Yep, I like it. All right, who do we got left?
We have Mike S., Justin T., Carl R.,
this must be short because there wasn't that much space left on this document.
Yep, Ben F. and Infinite Gary. There we go. We had 15 questions. We got through only 10, but that is how things go.
Only 10. Poor you.
I know.
All right. So this is AV Rant. To get your question answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week, our 85 patrons over at patreon.com, as well as Jaden, who talked us up to Accessories for Less, and James, who also did the same. So thank you, James, Jaden, and our 85 patrons at Patreon.
That's right. Jaden and James, thanks for talking us up to Accessories for Less. It's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. If you listening would like to sign up to become an automatic monthly donor, and thanks very much to our 85 patrons who have done so. And if anyone would like to just make a one-time donation because they don't want to sign up for Patreon, come to AVRant.com, our website, and over on the right-hand side, it says Support AVRant, and that will take you to PayPal.
All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.